Well, can I call you back in half an hour?
Hi there, welcome to Boxing Deep Dive. I'm Lyndon Hosking, and great to have you along for another episode of Classic Fights, and what a ripper we've got for you in this episode. I'm going to bring in my co-host for this episode tonight, and it's the one and only Grant Tassie Brown. How are you, mate?
Good, thanks, Lyndon. You know what they say, winners are grinners, and I don't know, mate. Like, I've kicked Peter Maniatis' ass 7 times in a row now. It's not even being enjoyable now. It's a bit like, it's sort of beyond fun now. Like, I used to get a little spark when I beat him, but it's sort of like a bit everyday sort of thing now. It's like putting my socks on and my shoes or brush my teeth. It's just so, I don't know, I'm just so used to beating him now, Lyndon. It's just not even fair.
Bit of a broken record now, isn't it? But no, that's for the quiz that we're referring to on a Thursday night. Obviously, you've 7 in a row. So
7 in a row, mate. He's MIA tonight. So I mean, I don't know if he's trying to revent himself. Maybe watching movies. Maybe reading a bit of more boxing. Mate, I don't know, but he needs something. He needs
a bit more education.
He needs some help.
Yeah, no, I agree, mate. He needs to do a little bit of brushing up on the boxing history, I think. But, mate, great to have you along. And, you know, we missed last week. Obviously, there was a bit going on. We had the Zarafa Hardman fight and a few other commitments. And
yeah, we're both there too, Lyndon. We're both there.
It was an awesome fight, mate. I don't think
I saw you there, and I saw you wearing the mask for the Hardman entrance. I saw that.
The what was it? The Purge, whatever it was. I was trying to explain it last night.
I'm obsessed with it. I never knew nothing about the movie. I've watched 2 of them now within a week. I love it.
Yeah, I was going to get one of the masks, and I thought, it's a bit stupid to take a mask
I wouldn't
home.
mind doing a bit of purging.
Yeah, we need to.
There'd be a few in Tasmania, locking their doors if I had 12 hours to do what I wanted to do to them. I know that.
Yeah, it's not a bad
That's
concept, though,
truth.
is it? Yeah, no, I don't mind. I don't mind that. It's not a bad concept to have was it 24 hours, whatever it is?
Yeah, I reckon it's great, mate. If that ever happens, mate, God help a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. But, mate, I don't think there's a Rafa Hardman fight's probably going to be covered by us in the coming years. It's been a classic fight, but I'm sure tonight's one will be. It's and I refer to, it was back to my pick this week, obviously, and I've picked this one, and I can't believe we haven't done it in the past. It's, of course, Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, the first fight from the Olympic Stadium in Montreal, Canada. Took place on June 20th, 1980 for the WBC Welterweight Championship. Now, mate, we talk about classic fights. They don't get much more classic than this one, do they?
No, I remember it well, mate. I remember getting it on the VHS from the video store that used to have boxing videos.
I remember, yeah.
Sitting down with me beautiful dad, God rest his soul, and watching Leonard Duran. He watched it live. He told me. I was only 2 years old, so he watched it live at the pub.
Yep.
And he actually backed Duran. He backed Duran.
Is that right? Yeah. I mean, what was I? I think I might have been 6 or 7. I think 6. I might have been.
He watched it. So, he watched it somewhere. I think it was a pub. Probably knowing him, it would have been a pub. But he did watch it, and he backed Duran. Believe it or not, with my uncle, because I don't know. He had a bit of a feeling about Duran being such a monster. But Leonard, gold medalist, he was the golden boy. He beat Benitez for the world title, and then Duran, arguably the greatest lightweight of all time, slaughtered everyone in his path. I think he only had the one loss, and he revenged that. And then he against De Jesus, and he jumped up the waterweight to take on the great Sugar Man.
Yeah, look, it was really a match made in heaven, wasn't it, as far as the promoters go? Because, like you said, you had Sugar Ray Leonard, who was the ultimate golden boy, I suppose, before De La Hoya came along. He was just, the matinee idol of as you will, whereas Duran was the villain in the black hat. I mean, he had a lot of admirers, but he really relished in that being the villain, didn't he? And if you had a match, been sitting down trying to manufacture what is the best way to market this fight, they've done it perfectly. Just the personalities of the guys and their makeup, their styles, everything just geared towards just, as it says here, a classic fight.
Yeah, mate. Look, Sugar Ray Leonard, he appealed to white America, not just black America, which was massive. He was the most personality person since Muhammad Ali, who was his idol. And I throw back to the great Sugar Ray Robinson as well. He was everything. He had it all, mate. He had speed, power, charisma, good-looking guy, won the Olympic gold medal. And then Duran was, from the tough streets of Panama, beat everyone to become, the great champion he was. And he done everything to get under to Leonard's skin. He just had that real machismo, that real arrogance and very in your face that Leonard never seen before. Leonard never had anyone put it on him at the weigh-in and that. So, yeah, this was a real perfect clash of styles and personalities.
Yeah, you're right, because you look at both sides of the fence and you had Duran, who really just despised the attraction of pretty much everything that Leonard that he stood for. Being the matinee idol, he had the money, he was the A side and everything here, and I'll talk about that in a bit more in a second as far as purses and that goes, but he despised everything that Leonard stood for, whereas Leonard, on the other hand, pretty much, wrote Duran off. He was the man, and, he'd obviously the Olympic gold medalist and that sort of stuff, so, as I said, mate, you couldn't have set the stage better than what this was.
100%, mate, and that's why we talk about these two with the Fabulous Four. We were blessed to have had, Hagler, Duran, Hagler, Duran, Hearns, and Leonard all together, mate. So this was the start of it. This was the very first one of the Fabulous Four fights, and just unbelievable, mate. Unbelievable.
Well, it took place, as I said, on June 20th, 1980 in Canada, same arena that Leonard won his gold medal in 4 years earlier. And it was really around that time too, wasn't it, that we saw a lot of these big fights go offshore. I mean, we saw it with Ali Fraser 3. We saw it with Ali Foreman. We obviously saw it with this one. It was around that time where promoters weren't scared to take fights like these away. And it really, I'm not quite sure. I couldn't really find how or why it was actually at this location, other than maybe the romanticism of where Leonard won his Olympic gold medal. What do you know anything about it? Why it was actually in Canada?
I actually don't. I'm sure Mike Altamura would, but he's not here tonight. But I mean, look, it is unusual. But besides the Leonard gold medal thing, I don't really know why.
Yeah, it did, mate, because you don't really see, or you've never really seen any big fights in Canada. This is probably the biggest to this day.
Well, maybe Duran's team wanted the neutral territory, and not America, not Panama, and maybe Canada was a bit sort of close by. I don't know.
Yeah, didn't really make a lot of sense, but there it was. I'm sure, look, who knows, maybe money talks, maybe Canadian government wanted there, who knows. But it's for the WBC Welterweight title, so Leonard had won that against Wilfred Benitez. He'd made the one defence against Davey Boy Green with a 4th round knockout. Duran had 8 fights at welterweight since going up from lightweight. So the interesting thing I wanted to talk to you about here, mate, is that the record, firstly, 27-0 for Leonard, but I didn't realise that Duran had 72 fights up to this stage of his career. It's hard to fathom, isn't it?
And that's the thing. When do you categorise Duran in his prime? Like, when he's in his prime? Because, he's probably not in his prime yet, but he's already has 79 fights.
Yeah, it's just amazing. And
or is this his prime? Or was his prime at lightweight?
That's right. Well, we had 12 defences of the title at lightweight. And as I said, he had 8 fights there. And the other thing
he does more after this as well.
Yeah, that's right. And the other thing I wanted to touch on was the purses. You talk about the A and B side. Leonard, $9 million. Duran, $1.5 million. So I didn't think the
back in 1980. Wow.
1980. I mean, you could add a 0 these days, of course, but but just the I suppose the mismatch of the allocation of the money. I would have thought that Duran would have been a big enough name to maybe demand a little bit more than that. Or again, Mike could probably know this, but I'm assuming Duran just wanted the fight right or wrong and just wanted taken whatever.
Yeah, well, being undisputed lightweight champion and that. I mean, but I don't know. Yeah, I didn't know it'd be that big. I'm surprised, but I know Leonard was huge, but Well, that's a big difference, isn't it? Yeah,
Oh,
wow.
it's massive, and I mean, it's hard to consider what it would be worth today. I'm assuming if Leonard got 9 million, it would probably be worth 50 these days. I'm assuming, and Duran would be 10 or 12 or whatever it might be. But either way, back then, just massive for the time. Well, let's get into the fight itself, mate. As I said, we'll just talk about the fight as we go. I've got it on silent there. So Leonard. So as I said, he was 27-0 with 18 knockouts. Duran was 71-1 with 56 knockouts. It's for Leonard's WBC Welterweight title.
I actually did it myself.
Yeah. I'm sorry, was that, did you say something, mate, or that was your phone there, was it?
Let's turn the volume down, yeah.
Oh, all good, mate. All good. But yeah, you can see the way the fight started too. Were you surprised that right from the word go that Leonard didn't box the way he normally did? He pretty much let Duran come to him, but he didn't move as much as what we all expected him to.
Can I tell you a great story that I got this from Sugar Leonard himself?
Is that right?
I spent 40 minutes with him in his hotel room when he visited Australia back in 2008.
Yeah, love to hear it, mate.
I took his 2 sons out to the Ivy in Sydney, and he repaid me by sitting down with me and signing some things. And I asked him, he said, look, he got into my head that much, leading up to it, talking about my wife and saying that Leonard was gay, and he, I just wanted to show him that I don't have to box him. I can outfight you, and that was a mistake that he made. So he said, just Duran got in his head, and he wanted to prove that he had more machismo than Duran.
Yeah, and obviously it backfired on him, and you can see here.
And he got hit with his shot.
Yeah, the left.
He got hit with his shot early.
Yeah.
So this was a big part of it. Look, in saying that, the fight was close, even though Duran won. It was Leonard fought Leonard fought well, even though it wasn't his normal style in a phone booth. But my grandfather always said it wasn't much in it, but Duran got in his head that much. He wanted to prove that I can outfight you.
Yeah, and a classic mistake, obviously, that would not happen in the rematch. But it sort of surprised me, as I said at the start, that Leonard did stand with him, and like you said, he wanted to prove his machismo in the fight. But you're right, it wasn't. I remember when I first watched it, I thought Duran won comprehensively, but that wasn't the case when I watched it again the other day. But because Leonard, he probably gave away, about 7 of the first 10 rounds, I'm probably thinking. And then he started to find his groove and sort of came on and made it a lot closer after that. We'll get to the scorecards, obviously, after the fight.
He did,
Yeah.
No, he did. But can you believe that, though, Lyndon? I got to sit down with Sugar Leonard, and we talked about Hearns, we talked about Hagler, we talked about Benitez. It was amazing.
So what else did he say about this fight? Anything in particular, or?
Just said that, the rematch, he wanted to jump on him quick. He knew that Duran goes up in weight, and he wanted it straight away. He wanted it to redeem himself straight away, and he knew that Duran would have trouble coming down in weight so fast. So,
yeah. So the promoters of it, I think it was Don King. Who was Leonard's promoter back then? Do you remember? Was it Bob Arum or
Arum?
So it was Bob Arum and Don King working in together.
Yeah.
But the other thing with it was just the unlike, I suppose you could almost liken it to a modern day Mayweather Pacquiao. I suppose it's probably the closest one I can think of it in modern day, with the two totally separate demeanours and supporter base and everything else.
A lot better fight though, Lyndon.
Yeah, I was just going to say, but the one thing different with this is not only was it a lot better fight, but the spite in this one was definitely real, wasn't it? It was 100% legit.
Well, look, on Duran's part, it was. Leonard had never seen nothing like it. Leonard was more of a gentleman. He never seen anyone really question his sexual orientation, stick his finger up at his wife, all these things. Duran was just doing to get under Leonard's skin, and it was just like a madman. They referred to Duran sometimes as Charles Manson. The look of him, just like he was insane.
Yeah. Yeah, and the way he fought, you're right, he did fight that way, because you just get the feeling that this was Duran's crowning moment as far as the pinnacle of his career. I know he went on to do some great things after this fight, but this was the fight he really got himself up to and probably never did again until maybe he even fought Barkley, 9 years later. I mean, I know he had, or Davey Moore maybe 3 years after this one, but this is the fight. Having watched it, he did fight like he was an absolute man possessed, and I'm not sure we saw that fire again, except for maybe a couple more times in his career, even though this was still only 1980.
No, that's a fair call, mate. I mean, look, to go from lightweight and to beat, I mean, Duran was already one of the greatest of all time, but to go up and beat, again, one of the greatest of all time, an undefeated Olympic hero.
Yeah.
I mean, Benitez went on to win fights after Leonard beat him too.
Yeah.
I think he was 3-division world champion or 2-division. No, he'd already been 2-division. He was become 3, light middleweight champion. Lost a close decision to Tommy Hearns. But I mean, so this was definitely Duran's, his most meaningful fight was to beat the great Leonard. And
you mentioned it at the start of the episode here, is that about where this stood in Duran's scheme of things as far as his career go. I actually think this was his peak. This was the peak of his powers right here.
Yeah.
And after this one, obviously he lost to Leonard. 5 months after this? But it's really hard to judge him on that one because it wasn't the same Duran. I know it wasn't the same Leonard either, so we can't say that. But he did look heavier. He did look lethargic. I know Leonard obviously had a lot to do with that, but it was nothing on the Duran that we saw in this fight. And as I said, apart from Davey Moore 3 years later, to Barkley in 1989, and maybe one or two others, this was the fight that I think was it for Duran. This is where he was at his peak, and I don't think anyone would have beaten him this night, no matter from what era.
Everyone has a night where no one can beat him, and this night is for definitely Duran.
Yeah. I mean, on a smaller scale, we've seen it. Even here in Australia, we saw Jeff Horn when he beat Manny Pacquiao. He just fought one of those fights, one for the ages. I don't know whether it's the case with George Kambosos, whether it's going to be the same.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Similar thing where he totally fought out of the box, and whether he backs it up remains to be seen. But as I said, I just think watching this fight here is that Duran, I don't think any fighter from lightweight to welterweight would have beaten him this night. And it's also a question I was thinking about watching it. What would have happened, and I'd like your input on this one, what would have happened if this welterweight Duran had fought the welterweight Hearns? Would it have been a different story, or is it a classic case of story of styles make fights, and it would have been a similar result?
I think styles make fights. I'm not going to say he gets iced again by that right hand, but styles do make fights, and Tommy was a freak of a waterweight, specimen-wise, reach, light middleweight. I think it was light middleweight that when they fought actually. I think styles do make fights. I really do.
Yeah, and I like that there, the way he continues on with it afterwards. There was no hugs. There was no
just
respect.
An animal.
Yeah.
An animal.
And that's why you can tell it was just 100% legit, because it was like, even when the bell was over, man, I don't even want to shake your hand. I thought it was, and even here, mocking you there. So, look, we don't obviously condone that sort of behaviour, but look, I just thought that was great of that bygone era. So just to go over the scorecards, mate, it was 146-144 for Duran, 145-144 for Duran, and 148-147 for Duran. Now, the last judge there, Angelo Paletti, who scored at 148-147, that means it was 3 rounds to 2. So are you telling me that in a 15-round fight, you scored 10 rounds even? Now, that's just ridiculous, isn't it?
That is ridiculous.
You couldn't separate him in 10 rounds.
Mate, that's just a joke.
So the other guy had it 6 rounds to 4 with 5 rounds even. The other one had it 6 rounds to 5 with 4 rounds even. But yeah, 3 rounds to 2 with 10 rounds even is just ridiculous. So as we mentioned there, mate, Leonard won the rematch in November of the same year, and like you said as well, that really good play by Leonard to actually get him only 5 months later, because Duran was notorious for blowing up in weight and doing God knows
100%.
God knows what else outside the ring. Of course, he loved the party and everything else. So after this one, Leonard would actually. It was surprisingly how quickly Leonard's career probably finished after this one as well. He beat Ayub Kalouli for the WBA junior middleweight title in June of 1981 after beating Duran in the rematch. Had the epic fight with Hearns, of course, in September 1981. He would then fight Bruce Finch in February 1982, and that was pretty much it for the first part of his career, because he came back 2 years later for the ill-fated comeback with Kevin Howard when he got dropped and had the detached retina. Then he of course he came back 3 years after that and fought Hagler, and then had the fights with Lalonde, the rematch with Hearns, number 3 with Duran, and finished with Norris and Camacho. So whereas Duran, I mean, he much had a second career and then a third career. You know, he reinvented himself.
He did.
Reinvented himself after beating Davey Moore, after he'd lost decisions to Wilfred Benitez and a couple others there as well. After beating Moore, he had the close loss to Hagler, and I don't think he received enough credit for that. And then he went down again after getting knocked out by Hearns. So
the fight against Hagler, and that's why sometimes I doubt. Sometimes, I mean, Hagler's a legend, but there's that fight with Duran. Being that Duran was originally a lightweight, to only just get by over Duran. That's why sometimes I got a bit of a cloud about Hagler, being on top for so long. But besides the famous guys he beat, were all coming up guys. I mean, Leonard and Hearns, everyone on his resume were a lower weight fighter, and he got beat by one of them, beat one, and the other one only just got over. And that's it. Sometimes I question Hagler against Monzon or Ray Robertson or Gene or Harry Greb, anyone like that. I bring back. I mean, as good as Duran was, but he really should have beat that guy a lot easier.
Yeah, you're right. He probably had no right going that close to Hagler at the time, and obviously Thomas Hearns put paid to that in the next fight after he fought Hagler, because it was one of the most blitzing knockouts ever, that second round knockout. And who would have thought that Duran would be able to recover from that? But he did. And it wasn't until 5 years later, by the way. He had a few hiccups along the way, but he beat Iran Barkley in a massive upset in 1989. He fought Sugar Ray again at the end of 1989 for the WBC super middleweight title. Got beat on points, and but after that again, away he went again. He had the 2 fights with Camacho. He had the 2 fights with Pazienza, and a lot of others in between. So it's just an amazing career. But just one of those fights, mate, where I feel one of those fights where I just wish I had been a little bit older to really appreciate it. I was like you. I watched it years later on the VHS from the video shop. Yeah. Before the days of YouTube. But what, just a monumental time of the boxing world to have these two, plus you throw in Hagler, Hearns, Wilfred Benitez, and all the others, even the Pepino Cuevases and all those types of guys. It was just a great time for boxing.
Mate, look, it's an era that we always still talk about. I mean, they're both, all 4 of them are, all 4 could be in the top 10 of all time, pound for pound. I've got 3 of them in. Yep. Leonard, Hearns, and Duran. I just have Hagler missing out, but it could be there easily. These 4, what can you say? These 4, if you're talking boxing, you mention these 4 guys every time. Yeah. Every time.
And who knows, if Wilfred Benitez had fought Hagler, maybe he would have had a Fab 5. It was only
Wilfred
one fight
Benitez
short.
And Lyndon, Mike McCallum was just outside there as well.
Yeah, he was.
Mike McCallum couldn't get any of these guys to fight him.
Yeah. Well, probably the closest he would have maybe got was maybe a fight with Hearns. I know that was spoken about at one stage, but I know...
Well, 100%. And Aaron Pryor was up around there too.
Yeah.
With maybe... Well, he beat Hearns in amateurs with Leonard and Hearns. So there's a few guys that didn't get that sort of Ray Leonard money, but they were around there.
Yeah, no, it was definitely for us the golden age, man. I know, a few years later, of course, we had Mayweather and Pacquiao and, the Miguel Cottos and Ricky Hattons and Shane Mosleys, but this was the time.
Who?
Yeah, compared to these, exactly. All right, mate. Well, thanks for coming along. Mate, it was your pick next week. Have you got anyone in mind, or you need a bit of time to think about it?
Yeah, give me a little bit of time.
All right, we'll make it a surprise next week, mate. But we did this one a little bit on short notice. So that was Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, the first fight back in 1980 from Montreal, Canada. Look forward to having you all on board next week, and thanks for tuning in.
Where are you, Peter? Come out of hiding, Peter. He's under his bed. Come out, Peter. I'm coming for you. 7.
See you, mate.